Greetings. Thank you for joining me. Remember this beauty? Yeah. Okay. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's my bike, of course. Now, you may have seen it in previous videos. And in those previous videos, I had the bicycle running with a Bafang mid-mount motor, running at 250 watts to power me up the hills. And it was great. But things moved on. The missus decided to get into cycling again, so I moved that kit over to her bicycle, which is smaller, and frankly the kit performs better on her bike than it ever did on mine. I thought, well, where to go from there? I thought I could just restore my bicycle back to stock, back to just gears on the front, gears on the back, no power. Nothing wrong with that, and if you upgrade all the parts and get it running, then it's a superb experience. There's nothing wrong with a traditional unpowered bicycle, but I fancied an upgrade, something that will help, because my knees are getting older and I need it with those Dudley Hills. So where to go? Well, if you're a fan of these sort of things, you'll be aware there's the hub gears you can get on the front or the rear, and that's the brushless motors. They're great, but they're a bit obvious. They're a bit obvious, and depending on the size, the bigger they are, the more watts they're running, and the more likelihood there will be that you'll be pulled over by the police and have your bicycle seized and crushed. So the same can almost be said of the mid-mounts, although we're seeing more and more of those in the mainstream, all restricted to legal levels. Within the UK, the 250 watts is a legal level. Those are great, but again, they are expensive, and they have, I prefer them, to be fair. They're really, really good. But I thought maybe I could go for a third option. Now, I'm aware there is also a fourth option, which is the petrol motor that fits sort of within the bicycle frame, and but those are noisy and they attract the attention of the police again, which can get your bicycle crushed and heavy fines and all that good stuff, to be avoided. So I thought, let's go with the third option, and the third option is the rear-mounted DC brushed motor with a gear. So one of these, basically. So there we go, with nice legal course, 250 watts only motor, which runs off the, I think it's 12 volts. Yes, it's 12 volts. So you've got quite a bit of flexibility if your battery pack isn't all that. It's anything up to 36 volts, but it will survive with 12 volts. I know, I've tested it. So there's this, and it's linked to a lovely little cheap and cheerful, well covered, protected gear mechanism, and a free wheel. And the idea is you mount it on the back of your bicycle on a bracket that it comes with, and it's a very simple system. It also comes with a motor controller, a brushed motor controller, old school like this. There's a few variants you can upgrade if you want to a more powerful and risk burning out your motor, but it's your call. It comes with one of these, and the kit also comes with a little switch on the handlebars to control it all. And mine gives me a reading of the potential voltage across the battery, but I'm not going to trust it. And that's all you get. You do have to buy handlebar brake switches separately, and I'd recommend always going for the most expensive you can get if you go that option, because they are a key part of the system. The brake levers that cut out the motor when you're braking, they tend to come as standard on the more expensive packs, the mid-mount motors, the hub motors, and they're essential. But for some reason they don't come as standard on this kit. I paid about £90 for mine, and I'm aware that you can get them more cheaply, but there's always a quality issue, and I like to go with what has a good review and a reasonable quality. Now this motor, it feels okay, but there are a few issues with it. So it comes with a bracket, as I say, and that's supposed to hold it firmly on the frame. Now, I can tell you that this weighs about 3 kilograms in my hand. So it's a fairly big heavy device to have on the back end of your bicycle, on the frame. Now hanging that requires a bit of a beefy bracket. So it comes with a beefy bracket, which is it's cast steel, by the feel of it. Now, as you can tell, I've chopped mine because it wasn't suitable for the frame. It has these, it's basically the wrong shape, basically. So it's designed with a piece that would go, I've just cut it off, a piece that would go into the forks to sort of hold it with the mounting bolt for your wheel, and then the rest of it kind of clamps with one of these, and various sort of clamps onto the frame itself. But it was the wrong shape, and it put the motor in the wrong place, so I tried to adjust it and then slipped like an idiot, and you can tell I went straight through the hole that was supposed to mount the motor. Yeah, harsh words were said in the middle of the night when I was doing that. Shouldn't have done it when I was tired. So I've got to make another bracket. It was on the cards anyway, but it is what it is. I'm not particularly happy about the way it worked though, because it relies on 3 little bolts made with cheap nasty metal in order to hold this heavy motor in place. Now if the bolts fail, it's going to risk the motor coming adrift and then grinding itself into your wheel, destroying your wheel and knocking you into the path of oncoming traffic. It can potentially kill you. Or worst case scenario, there's a worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, the blessed thing drops off, tears itself free from its wires as well, and then goes bouncing along and up into somebody else's vehicle. Because something like this, travelling at speed, hitting the underside of somebody's car, is going to cause major damage. Imagine it hits a Tesla and goes through the battery pack. It's got enough sharp edges to cause a fire, and you're going to be that popular guy. So I thought, you know what, I don't want to use the bracket that it comes with. But you do have to put it in the vicinity of where it's initially designed to go, i.e. as close to the back wheel hub as possible. But it has to be held securely. So I figured the best sort of bracket I could make will be one that doesn't rely on these 3 bolts. It relies on something to hold it properly from underneath, and then the bolts just sort of stop it moving forward and back too much. You know, that would be the extent of it. And so that's what I'm making. So let me turn it around again and I'll show you a little bit more detail. Now this bicycle frame has caused me some problems. It had a very proprietary way of implementing the derailleur system on the initial build. When I found this bicycle, it was in a second-hand shop and it had been allowed to rust to death quite a bit by the previous owner. So I bought it for, it was like £20, and I bought it completely, restored it and replaced a lot of the parts. And for the longest time I'd got away with a lot of WD-40 and a lot of love, and I used the original derailleur system, which was engaging with the back wheel, and it kind of worked, but it wasn't brilliant. When I used the Bafang as part of this whole setup, I had it set up with just one gear, and I could lock the derailleur system just to engage with that one gear and keep it there. No shifting. Shifting wasn't an option, so you know, if the going got tough, well, the motor would take over anyway, so it really wasn't a problem. With the new system, I'd like to have the high and the low gears back again, so I bought a brand new wheel, and because I had to, because the previous one, the hubs failed completely, and I've developed a sort of arrangement here which allows me to use the derailleur setup that I had in stock, which needs to hang from a part of the frame. So it's not ideal. If you do this, hopefully you won't have these problems. You know, I've replaced front and rear wheels because I'm going to turn this around actually, because the initial hubs that I had on the old build, they finally failed. They were this sort of thing, really. This is a front hub, of course, but the you've got a very cheap alloy hub, and it's got cups built into it, and the ball bearings sitting within the cups, and then an equally cheap cone that you can see. These are the cones here. They go into the ball bearings and kind of hold them in place, and hopefully everything works nice. You get it just adjusted properly, and the wheels should roll true without too much grinding. Typically though, because these are really cheap, this is brand new, but it grinds terribly. I bought 2 new wheels from the local bicycle shop. I said I'd rather like to buy 2 new bicycle rims and the spokes and a hub, and I'll build it myself. He says no, we only sell these pre-made ones from Raleigh. So I went with them because they were cheap. It's a nice rim, but rebuilt the wheel completely with a hub of my choice, 2 hubs of my choice. So I've gone instead of the built-in bearing nonsense which fails and you end up with a grind that you can feel through the frame, I went with the pressed-in seal bearing units, which are the modern way to go, and they're far smoother. They've got a better running life. You got a couple of thousand miles off them generally before they need to be replaced, which is really good. So I bought a new front hub and took the front wheel apart, brand new wheel. I just didn't even mount the tyre, just took it apart completely, reused the spokes, but put in the brand new hub, and that's been great on the front. New tyres, new energy, whatnot, and same for the back. But on the back, I've got what they call a flip hub, a fixie flip hub. So the hub itself has 2 sides. Now normally you have just the one side where the gear mechanism goes, and the other side's blank, or you maybe have a disc brake assembly on there. With this one, it's got the mounting point on the one side for your single speed or your multi-speed gears, and on the other side there's a fixie mounting for a fixed gear. Now the idea is if you're into your racing, you can take your bicycle wheel off and flip it around and use the fixed gear, which doesn't have any it doesn't have the freewheel mechanism built in. It's just fixed, so you stop pedaling, I don't like those really, but what it gives this particular build is the ability to have a fixed, properly centered gear on the back, and that's for use with, well, this. It does come with its own gear, of course, but it's better to have something that's properly centered. Here's the handlebar mounted switch. It's not strictly road legal because the kit doesn't have any cadence sensor to tell when you're pedaling or not. It's just a press button. The harder you press, the faster you go. There's a switch here which I thought was going to be a horn, but it's actually just an on-off switch, and you've got a 3-stage LED indication of the voltage. I'm not going to put too much by that, and I might replace that in due course, but that's what it is for now. It's quite nice. Feels nice. When it's, you can't quite tell from the video, but it's got a good quality feel about it. I had to buy a new set of these. I think it's Waxing, it's probably said differently. Brake handles. They're good brake levers, good sturdy, and they've got a little switch here, which determines whether you're pulling the brake lever or not. This in turn feeds back to the motor controller to cut out the motor when you're braking. It saves things overheating. Now on the back, I've created my own. I could have used a standard bike rack, but I'm going to build this into a covered arrangement to protect the motor controller from thieves and mostly the weather because it's very cheap and cheerful. It's also to look tidier as well. Above it runs a bike rack I'm going to use for my batteries. Now below it we see the cog on the fixie hub. So this is the cog that comes with it, and you might pick out, just try and zoom in I guess, you might pick out there there is a plate that goes on the back of the spokes, on the inside of the spokes, and you've got two sets of rubber pads which go on either side of the spokes, and then the bolts go through this. Basically, you're bolting this whole cog to the spokes, and because I've got the fixie hub arrangement there, it means I can better centre that cog on the wheel. I don't want it running elliptically. Like I say, if it causes problems to me, I'm going to swap that out for the smaller fixie gear that came with the hub. So now I have to create a bracket, if you like, which will hold the motor in place very firmly and keep it steady whilst the wheel is turning. I need a bracket that is secure enough to hold it under all circumstances, no matter what pothole I hit, no matter what I knock the bike against, so the motor never comes astray, never falls off. It's hard to steal, and it gives me good service. Now, I've had quite a few experiences with trailers, bicycle trailers, things like that, and you see a number of different trailers have a number of different ways to mount the gear on the back. And the idea is generally they've got some sort of bracket that mounts to the frame in as tidy way as possible and easy decouplable. I'm not going for that. I want this to stay put, but I do want to make sure that if I ever want to remove it, I'm not going to damage the frame irreparably. Some of the clamps that you can get can crush the tubing of the frame, and that's never a good thing for the integrity of the frame. So I've created a little wooden block, basically, and this fits in the... This is a mock-up, if you like. I'm going to create this shape in fiberglass, and then this block is going to be the basis that will for the basis for the bracket that will hold everything in place. So this is just the inner part. I'm going to have two plates, one on either side, which will extend back to the bracket, which will hold the motor exactly where it needs to be. Onto the glassing then. So in order to create this part, I've got some aluminium mesh. It's not particularly cheap. I've got 2 packs of that. You get one sheet. I mean, it's quite sharp, but you can cut it with scissors. I got a pack of this stuff, which is Fibril. That's my preferred brand. Others exist, of course, and what it is it's a styrene resin with glass fibres mixed in with it, and when you add the hardener, a little blob of the hardener, mix it in within a very short space of time, an exothermic reaction generates heat, causes the whole piece to harden. And if you use a little less of this, the hardening process takes longer, giving you more working time. Or if you wanted to just kick off and cause you big problems and make a brittle part, you stick in as much as you like. But they always give you far more than you're ever going to need in this packet, but it is what it is. The packet also comes with a spatula of sorts. Limited use, but they're good for mixing. I would recommend a good trowel, frankly, and of course it has a plastic lid. The shelf life of this product isn't bad. It isn't particularly brilliant. Once you open this and expose it to the air, you can extend the shelf life by buying the pure resin. That's made by another manufacturer whose name evades me right now, and you can add a little bit of resin in there and sort of dilute it. It does make for a part that is, well, more flexible, shall we say, when you do that, but it stops it drying out. If you get this stuff when it's dried out, you've got no chance of working with it unless you've got some more styrene resin. Now, why, you ask, am I not just using the wood? Because wood is nice and strong, isn't it? And it's great for screwing things into. Well, it is, but wood rots. And what we're talking about is a part that's going to be on a bicycle, and they need it to stay put and resist the weather, the awful British weather. Yeah, rather than risk it expanding, contracting and just falling off, I'm making it out of plastic, which should be a whole lot more stable. It does still contract and expand, but not to the same extent. Now this product, the Fibril, is marketed for professionals repairing dents in bodywork, that sort of thing. It sticks rather well to metal, especially dented metal. It sticks rather well to some plastics as well, but it doesn't stick to them all. And now the nice thing is, bag plastics, like, well, you know, this sort of plastic, it doesn't stick too well to that at all, which helps you mould it. And I'll get onto that very shortly. These sheets come in bags which are quite useful if you treat them right. So I'm gently cutting this one out and taking my time with it. There we go. Aluminium sheet, mesh. It's designed to be light, but also allows you to squeeze the resin through, and it creates a little reinforced bond. Get that one out, pop that bag to one side and get the other one out as well. So if you want to create a fiberglass part and you don't have the time nor the inclination to make a nice mould and do it properly, what you can do is, with gloved hand of course, and plastic bags, you can take a lump of the Fibril and you can mix it up with the catalyst, get it going, and then start working it carefully into the shape you want, using a plastic bag. If you do it carefully enough, like an old shopping bag, it is a great surface to work with. You do have to have something like a flat bench to create nice flat edges, and I would recommend making some sort of mould if you can, but let's just freehand this one, shall we? Because what I want to do is take it from this roughed up part and add little lips along the edge to better hold the tubing, and then of course I'm going to put another sheet on to create the sides, and one that will be a separate piece will be screwed in place with some bolts that go through. I think that's where I'm going, so I'll give it a shot. It might end at a complete waste of time. I hope not, because this is an expensive product to be using. So I've roughed up the edges, created a rough shape. What I aim to do is to press down the edges, sort of work my way into a sort of shape that's going to work for us here. If you do this, be careful, because it is sharp, especially where you cut it, but it's going to get us the result we need. Just forcing it into place with my fingers. What I'm going to be doing is making this sort of a little box as a starting point. Then I'm going to put it on a plastic bag and create a kind of tray. That's the plan. See what I've done there. It's all right. Later on you'll see me sanding. The idea of the plastic bag technique I'm using is to minimise the sanding and minimise the attrition of your product, because at 18 quid a tin, £18 a tin, you don't want to be messing with it or wasting product. Okay, so this is a good starting point. Now, as you can see, the edges aren't even. It isn't a perfect box. It's not intended to be. It's a starting point. We're not going to get too fussy. Let me go and get a bag. So what you need is just your common or garden plastic bag. Now, I know in some parts of the world these are quite heavily regulated, and here in the UK we've got a plastic bag tax now. Doesn't stop the need for us to use them. You could potentially use paper bag, anything that stops you getting sticky mess on your fingers. But plastic bags don't adhere to the resins, so these are really, really good for that. And when you're done, you can always burn the plastic. Don't hate on me for that. It's better than going in the sea and ending up in some poor animal's eyes or whatever. Yeah, I'm not about having lots of rubbish dumped in the world's beauty spots to end up in some turtles behind. No, not in my name. Thank you very much. Right. Here in Wolverhampton, our local authority has a lovely big incinerator, and I think they burn most things, whether you put it in recycling or not. I don't know for sure, and I don't want to get close enough to the smelly recycling incinerator to find out. Better that than pollution of the seas, though. So what you do is you cut the handles and you cut down the sides, and you end up with a nice flat sheet, flattish anyway, with the exception of that bit in the base where it tends to be something you need to cut. So I'm going to go in there and cut that. And you can fold it out. You don't have to be too fussy about this. If you've got lots and lots of bags, and lots of people have a bag collection, then you can do what you like. You just need some good clean material, preferably something you can dispose of. Right, so stop waffling, Matthew, and get on with it, huh? Now, if you're wondering what that thin plastic bag was for, well, it can be used for moulding purposes, but in this case, I'm using the initial bag to protect the table because this isn't my desk and I want to protect it. Next, take the piece of plastic that came wrapping the mesh, and this is a thicker plastic that's better for moulding. Less chance of it tearing. And this is what we're going to work on. Okay, before I get on to that, we've got the knotty subject of how we open the tin. Find a good set of scissors or a screwdriver is quite useful. This stuff is very, very pungent, so if you have people in the household that are susceptible to glue smells, you may want to work outside or in the garage. Well away. Working my way around this tin and hope it lets me in. One moment, please.